Hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast. This is Naren, your co-host. I'm delighted to have my dear friend Ben Tune with me. Hey, Ben, how are you?
Hey, Naren, doing well, thank you. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Let's jump into our topic. The topic we have for today, which I think is something that all of you will be really interested in, is insurance contracts are changing, what to look out for. I have a bunch of questions for you sent in by our audience, Ben. So let me start with the first one.
Mhm.
First question talks about termination clauses. 6 to 90 day termination notice is considered normal. What are some changes you are seeing with regards to termination clauses?
Yes, I just read one before our meeting today, Naren, and there's one insurance company that's requiring up to a 180-day termination notice.
Wow.
Last week, I saw contract changes for another client, and it was 120 days. And so this is the normal reaction. Well, I shouldn't say normal. This is a sort of an unprecedented reaction to the massive amount of doctors that are going out of network. And this is showing the insurance companies' cards, is they're showing that they need doctors more than doctors need them in terms
Yeah.
of in-network purchase. Yeah, they're showing their cards. And for the first time in, at least in my career in dentistry, but I imagine that this is very much likely the first time in the history of dentistry where you're seeing the PPO contracts change from the typical 60 to 90 days to 100, and now between 100 and 180 days, right? And
Yeah.
so you have to be careful with this because in this day and age, there are a lot of doctors that are buying dental practices. And I know it's customary for a lot of people to sign contracts that they don't read. My recommendation is to not do that when it comes to participation with insurance. And I know that there's a concern among doctors saying, well, we need new patients. It's a slow economy. There are practices that are experiencing some slowdowns here in 2024. And so therefore they want to go and network with insurance plans. They look at, they negotiate fees and look at the fee schedule and then sign the dotted line, but they fail to recognize it's not just the termination clauses. There's so much change within these insurance contracts that doctors need to pay attention to. But these termination clauses, be very careful to make sure that you don't sign an agreement that you don't like. So with that said, Naren, yeah, these clauses have changed more so to find a way as an insurance industry to retain doctors from terminating, or at least extend the termination period for as long as it can.
Yeah, this is unfortunate. And I think this shows how desperate the insurance companies are in trying to control doctors and, uh, to run the lives of doctors. The next thing that kind of concerns me is I have seen some insurance plans that now include minimum participation requirements. Like I've seen 12 months, 24 months. And again, they cannot terminate in that 12 to 24 months if that's the minimum participation requirement. Have you seen this, Ben?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's just a handful of insurance companies these days that are testing this new contract language. And these are all tests. They're tests to see how the industry will respond. So in this case, with regards to the 12 to 24-month minimum participation requirements, yes, in fact, I need to get out of the habit of naming insurance companies on our podcast because every time I do, I get nasty phone calls from them. So there are several major insurance carriers that if you do enter into a brand new credentialing agreement or contract with those insurance plans, you'll see contract language that says 12 to 24 months. There are rumors for some insurance carriers where they're going to have 36-month participation agreements. So naturally, this shift in the industry, if doctors are not paying attention to these things, you'll start to see that these contract changes with these minimum participation requirements and termination clauses being extended, you're going to see this become the norm in dentistry. So the reason why I wanted to bring this up today is hopefully that this message goes viral to the entire industry in the sense that we cannot tolerate these minimum participation requirements. These should always be month to month with at least 60 to 90-day notice. So if
Yeah.
more and more doctors accept these contracts, then it's going to be the norm in dentistry, unfortunately. So let's make sure that we don't.
Yeah. That's a good message. Let's not, accept these 12 to 24-month minimum participation agreements and 6-month termination on top of that. That's crazy.
Mhm. Yep.
What about recredentialing? Do you see any minimum participation requirements with regards to recredentialing?
Yes. So among the largest of the dental plans that exist out there, we started to see the recredentialing contracts to indicate that on the effective date of your recredentialing, you don't have the right to terminate for 12 months as a doctor.
Wow.
And I've already started to see some doctors point when we
What
read
if
those.
you have a health issue, or what if you move out of town because you just are done with like a city? Like they can still come after you with these
Some,
contracts?
yeah, I'm not sure what the recourse is. I mean, the contracts are sort of written very clear that if one party were able to one party violated the agreement, the natural process from there is that the other party would sue you, and so within those agreements, they're very clearly spelled out to where they don't really specify death, disability, moving, things of that
What about
nature.
selling the practice?
Yeah, they don't specify anything in there. Like
Wow.
these contracts are they're so new
So
that they
let's
don't
say
have.
I'm just being, those that if something happens in your family, your wife gets sick or your husband gets sick, you are now going to work for the insurance company. This is taking care of your wife. That is crazy. And they don't even, it's not even a job. It's like, they make money off of you. Like it's just the other way around.
Yeah, I don't see anything that would force you to go to work if you had an emergency situation. These contracts are not written that says you have to work 5 days a week or you have to work X amount of hours every single month. All they indicate is that you just can't terminate within 12 months, right? But so if you move, I mean, that's fine. If you can't show up to work, I haven't read anything in these contracts that would actually stipulate that you had to see patients.
Okay.
So with that said, yeah,
If you
there
sell,
are.
technically you're terminating the agreement because you're no longer be practicing at all. So is that
Yeah,
allowed? I guess we have to read the fine print, I guess, right? I don't.
when doctors leave practices, very few of them actually terminate their agreements. When doctors sell practices, very few of them would actually notify the insurance carrier.
Okay.
The only time insurance companies would know is when they engage in recredentialing and the new practice owner says, well, this doctor's no longer here, then you'll be removed from the network.
Right.
So there's a lot of flexibility, even with these new contract changes. I don't really see, other than the fact that you have a minimum participation agreement. If you move or get hurt or sick or anything like that, the contracts for the most part are pretty much the same. There's
But
no requirement for you
if
to
minimum
continue working.
participation agreements are not enforcing participation, is it pointless?
So there's a difference. Like if you move and you have that minimum 12-month agreement, you're going to get removed from that location anyway at some point. When your credentialing does eventually expire.
Right.
But on the part where you're forced to participate, that doesn't mean that you're forced to continue working there if you move out of state, right? That
Right.
has nothing
I
to
guess
do
the
with the
bottom line
agreement.
is you can't stop seeing their patients. Like in other words, you can't like as long as you are a practicing owner dentist, specifically, or even working in that practice, you have to continue to see those patients. Like you can't just walk away from those patients. Meaning, let's say you go to work, if a patient from that particular insurance company calls you, you have to take care of them. You can't terminate within the minimum participation agreement or your termination clause. You can't send a notice.
You can send a notice to the insurance company that you're not accepting new patients. And as long as the original agreement that you signed wouldn't stipulate against that, then you can most certainly do that. But on the flip side, if you're overbooked and you can't accept new patients anyway, that is your right. I mean,
But
so
can you
with
discriminate them?
these.
Can you say, okay, I will not take this insurance because it's not, it's not, what do you call, paying me well, and they have put this, termination clause of 180 days. So I'm going to not take those patients while I take some other patient.
um,
I guess we
forgive
should get a lawyer into this call.
forgive me, Naren. I don't fully understand that question on what
Oh,
you're asking.
no, I'm sorry. Like what I'm saying is, Ben, let's say I want to get out of this contract. It's crappy. but I have to wait because of the minimum participation clause for 24 months, right? Now, if a patient calls from that insurance plan, I'll say, I don't take this insurance plan. Can I do that? Even though I'm contracted with that insurance plan?
It depends on your agreement. If your agreement doesn't stipulate new patients, which a lot of them do, it's either you accept new patients or you don't. When you are showing on the website as an in-network provider and you're accepting patients, then a lot of the contracts do stipulate that you can't discriminate against patients and schedule them out. Like a lot of HMO practices would only limit like 5 patients from that particular HMO every month, and they don't want to accept the 6th patient. That is, in every state, that is inappropriate. There are state laws against scheduling discrimination. You have to communicate with the insurance carrier, and they would then have to delist you as accepting new patients on the website, which means that for a lot of insurance plans, if you do see a patient when you've notified the insurance plan that you're not accepting new patients, then you won't get paid if you do end up seeing a new patient and submit D0150, which for general dentistry practices is a comprehensive exam, which is what we use for new patients. So with that said, your contracts would sort of determine and guide what your options are as it pertains to not seeing new patients from that particular dental plan.
Right. So I guess the key message takeaway for me at least is be wary of these plans that have a 6-month termination clause or 12 to 24 or even 36-month minimum participation clause, whether you are recredentialing or whether you are the practice owner, right? So these are things you need to really, really pay attention to.
Correct. You want to read these contracts, and if you don't disagree, if you disagree with things that are listed in those contracts, then strike them out. Contracts with insurance carriers are not unilateral. There's 2 signature sections in these contracts, which means that if you want to make it a unilateral contract and not negotiate those terms in there, that's up to you. But in my mind, I would go to these termination clauses and strike them out. I would strike out 160 days or 180 days, and I would put 60 or 90.
Can you do that? Is that will they accept it?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, I mean, the one part about striking clauses from an agreement, there are some state mandated language, like for instance, you have to hold a dental license as an example. You can't strike that out of a contract, right?
Yeah.
But there are other things that you can strike out, like these termination things, or you can at least negotiate to amend them. But it's hard to tell which component or which part of a contract is mandatory and which ones are not. And so, at least since I've started in dentistry, I've always struck out clauses. And the way to do that is you just take a red pen, you strike it out, and then you initial it as well. The doctor that is signing the contract would have to initial those. When you submit them, and if the insurance company doesn't respond and they sign their part, even though those clauses being struck out, then there you go. You have a contract without the terms that were listed there. Keep a copy of that, because if the insurance company doesn't counter negotiate, then what that means is that they've accepted your changes to the contract at that point, right? But yeah, we do this every single day where you can strike out those clauses for sure.
Makes sense. If anybody has questions about a contract, that they're about to sign, any resources, any help they can lean on, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that we deal with on a daily basis is negotiating contract terms and changes. You can reach out to us at veritasdentalresources.com or give us a call, 888-808-4513. Just request a consultation as it pertains to contracts or contract concerns that you might have. I'll personally take a look at those for you just to see exactly what you're dealing with. And if it is something that can be modified or changed in terms of contract language, we can most certainly at least give you the best advice possible in that area.
Thank you, Ben. Really enjoyed our conversation today. If you enjoyed this podcast, go to insuranceuntangled.com. We're going to include show notes, resources, all the tips that Ben just shared with you. And also, if you are a fan of Google, you could listen to us on YouTube podcasts in addition to Apple Podcasts. On YouTube, you can subscribe to us. It's at Insurance Untangled. And every time you subscribe, once you subscribe, automatically you'll be notified of any new episodes that gets published. Till we have a till we meet again in another amazing episode of the Insurance Untangled podcast, have a wonderful week ahead.